Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baggins here, and today I wanted to do a quick update video for the builds that I've been using to heal dungeons in Season 1. We're also going to have a spicy PvP build in here as well, but this is primarily focused towards people who are interested in healing mutated expeditions in New World. With the changes coming in Season 1, what stats have I been running, and also like what weapon mastery, and then also what perks do you want to be looking for in your armor, what equip load do you want to be in, all that stuff. Now my intention is to make this a pretty short video. I don't want to do like a long 1 hour deep dive into all my different builds, but if you are interested in something like that, if you would like to see a healer build deep dive, we are going to be doing some updated builds for tank, healer, DPS, mage, all that good stuff shortly here on the channel. So make sure you are subscribed if you want to see those videos where they come out. We're also going to have written versions as well. But first things first, let's jump in with the stats. What stats have I been using to heal mutated expeditions in New World? Well, the baseline that I've been looking for these days is to go to 50 points into intelligence. Why do we go 50 points in intelligence? Because I am actually going in with Void Blade pretty often to do some damage. Why are we going in to do damage when we're healing? Well, I've been pretty interested in getting some good runs on the leaderboard, and in order to get like high score or good clear times, not only do you have to heal, but you also have to do some damage as well. So if you are a little bit more casual minded, you're not really too fussed on pushing leaderboards, you just want to try and like complete the dungeon, you can skip the intelligence. But for me, we're going 50 intelligence, 250 focus is the minimum that I would recommend as a healer, because you get this nice perk here. It's 30 mana every time something dies, so every time you or a member of your group kills an AI, you get 30 mana, and then probably like at least 130 constitution, at the very minimum 100 constitution, just so you don't get one shot, because we are quite squishy these days with the changes to fortify, but I would probably bump this up to like 140 at least, and then the remaining points I would put into focus just to make sure we get some nice juicy heals. People sometimes ask, is there any point in putting points above 300 focus? And the answer is yes, you still get bonus healing the more points you put into focus. It does sort of get diminishing returns, but yeah, we are still going to heal more with 325 focus than we would with 300 focus. Looking at the weapon mastery, I have actually still been running this all AoE healing build here, so Sacred Ground, Orb of Protection, and Beacon. The reason why I run this particular build is because we have been primarily healing all groups. They're all melee, so everybody's just in the melee range here with hatchets and spears and great axes and great swords. I thought we might see a few more people using bow or fire staff or ice gauntlet, but not in my groups. It's still been all melee. So if this is the boss here or the enemy and this is all my melee players, it makes sense to me just to drop all of my heals on them at the same time. There has been a few situations where I switched to Splash of Light, so I've been doing Sacred Ground, Beacon, and Splash of Light instead of Orb if I find it just a little bit stressful, like the final boss fight of Empyrean Forge. That's been pretty chaotic, so Orb, I just find it better to substitute in with Splash of Light. But yeah, most of my builds run Sacred Ground and Beacon. That has been like a baseline, and then it's either been Orb or Splash of Light. I haven't actually been using Divine Embrace because I just find it's a bit too slow to get off with the playstyle that I've been going for. But again, you know, your mileage may vary depending on what sort of group composition you're healing. I would recommend always going with Sacred Ground and Beacon these days, though, just as, you know, some pretty good baseline healing. Right, now jumping in with the loadouts, what are we rocking here? So we've got 9 different sets. Is it 9? 8 or 9? The loadouts feature is a pretty cool feature that we get in Season 1, where with the click of a button, you can change into a completely different set, just like so. So we have set up different sets of ward gear effectively for the content that we're going into. So we've got Corrupted Ward Fire, Ancient Ward Nature, Lost Ward Nature, PvP Healer, Angry Earth Ward Ice, Human Ward Nature, Empyrean Boss Fights, and Human Ward Mage. So we do actually have a mage set down here, which isn't related to healing, and maybe we'll go over that at the end of the video. We'll see how long we've been recording for. Now, one thing you guys may be picking up on is, why is it Fire, Nature, Nature, Ice, Nature? This is actually going to change depending on what we're going into. So I haven't actually done any Tempest Heart this week. I've just been doing the new Empyrean Forge dungeon, which of course is nature for us this week. This is probably going to change by the time the video comes out, but if I was going to jump into Tempest Heart, it is an Icebound mutation, so I'd actually want to change this to Corrupted Ward, Ice, and then slot a full set of ice gems in here, so aquamarine gems, and then I'd also go look to get my jewelry with the ice gems and slap those in there as well, so we'd have it like that one and that one there. But for the purpose of just getting through this video, let's just imagine it is a full set of ice gems anyway, and I don't need to go change them over. You guys might be asking, do I need to do this, Baggins? Do I need to change all of my gems over for the specific mutation? And the answer is, how competitive do you want to be? If you are aiming to get a good position in the leaderboard, or you just want to give yourselves the best possible chance of success and getting a gold rank and getting a decent score run, then yeah, go for the full set of gems. It is expensive. I think you probably could get away with like mostly opals and just switching it to a couple of them, but we are extra squishy these days because of the changes to fortify, so I would recommend doing a full set of the appropriate gems. So ice would be aquamarines, fire is ruby, nature is amber gems, and then there's also void, which we don't actually have a setup for currently because there hasn't been any void mutations in a while, but void would be amethyst. Now for the perks that we've got here, we've got Keen Beacon, Corrupted Ward, Voracious Blade, Corrupted Ward. Then we have a pair of gloves that drop from the Tempest questline. Highly encourage you guys to check these out. I'll put a link in the description down below for how to get the Tempest gear, but really good. Corrupted Ward Elemental Version is awesome. And another set here, and then the legs have Fortifying Sacred Ground, Corrupted Ward. So these are going to be a baseline piece of gear that you see for a lot of different dungeons that we go into, where we will have Fortifying Sacred Ground, we'll have Keen Beacon, and sometimes if I can get it, I'll also go for Voracious Blade as well. On the Void Gauntlet, we have Corrupted Bane and Refreshing Move here. Corrupted Bane obviously just going to allow us to do extra damage to the Corrupted because this is our Corrupted set, and Refreshing Move is something I always look to get on my Void Gauntlet as well, but this is more for if you go in with Void Blade, as if you have Refreshing Move, every time you hit the enemy, you get a big chunk of cooldown. It also stacks on top with the Refreshing Precision as well when you get crits, so you can just get a lot of cooldown reduction real fast, which means you can constantly keep spamming your Oblivion, your Scream, whatever other ability you're using on the Void Gauntlet. So I really recommend that if you want to play this sort of aggressive playstyle of healer, that you get a Refreshing Move and probably Bane as your other perk just to do some extra damage on your Void Gauntlet. The life staff that I've been rocking in most forms of content has been a Blessed Refreshing Move and Mending Protection. If you're not going to be using Orb of Protection, you could probably just stick on good old Will of the Ancients. We do have that down here somewhere. Where is Will of the Ancients? It's in my Empyrean boss fights. So just the classic here, Blast, Refreshing Move, and Refreshing. If you did have a Fortifying Sacred Ground life staff or something else, you could go for that. Maybe you could even use the Splash of Light life staff. It's, what is it called? Spirit Pool from Barnacles and Black Powder. But yeah, I've been using Blast, Refreshing Move, and Mending Protection. This is a crafted life staff, but there is actually one available as a drop from the new dungeon, the Empyrean Forge, so you could get basically the same thing, just with a little bit of Constitution in there by running the new dungeon a few times to get this life staff. I just like it a lot. When my team dropped low, we can pop Orb on them. It increases our healing power by 42%, I think it is. And then any heal we do after that just, you know, really like bumps everybody's health bar up pretty dramatically. So Refreshing Move and Blast is also like a baseline. You have to have that on life staff, no questions asked, because it gives you extra healing. And Refreshing Move, just every time you click and land an attack on the enemy, you lower your cooldowns. Combined with the fact that you are going to be running Blissful Touch, you can have your light attacks pass through your allies, heal them. When it hits the enemy, you get Revitalize to trigger, and you get Refreshing Move to trigger. It's just like, you know, Blast plus Refreshing Move, no questions asked. You're going to have that on the life staff if you want to get into healing in New World. Jewelry-wise for this build, obviously this is a bit weird because we got the fire gems and then we got the amulet here, but basically I recommend that you have health plus the protection perk for that particular mutation. So if it's a nature mutation, then you go nature protection, frost mutation, frozen protection, fire mutation, flame protection. You guys get the idea. And health is something that you always want to have on the amulet as well. I've actually gotten the extra step here to also make sure there's a relevant gem that lines up with the protection. And this is, again, like a best practice that I would recommend if you guys can pull it off, to have a the gem also corresponding with the protection here. You can see we've got the same sort of setup over here with the nature protection as well. The ring that I'm using in pretty much all my sets is Hearty, Sacred, and Siphoning. This comes from Mutated Starstone Barrows. Siphoning, I just find it to be kind of nice to just get a little bit extra mana back. Honestly, I think a Hearty, Sacred, Refreshing ring would be better, but this is what I've got right now, and it works pretty well for me. Earring-wise, perks that you always want to get here are Evasive and Healthy Toast. If I could get a third perk on this earring, it would be Refreshing Toast. And again, I've got the gem in here corresponding to the particular mutation that I'm going into. So we'll just keep this as fire now because it's a little bit confusing. But it would be an ice gem or an earring with an ice gem if we were going to go into a frost mutation, if that makes sense. The next set I've got here for is Ancient Ward Nature, and it's going to be fairly similar. So we've got Ancient Ward, Refreshing Evasion, Elemental Aversion, so somewhat similar to what we had over here, but instead of Corrupted Ward, it's Ancient Ward. You guys might be asking, do I need this ward gear, Baggins? And I would say yes. You know, it's like not required that you have ward gear, but it just makes everything easier. It makes it less likely that you're going to get one shot. So focus on getting your ward gear. This one dropped from doing mutated Lazarus instrumentality. That's what it called. Mutated Lazarus is where we got that. We got this from Starstone Barrows, just the normal. No, actually, no, it has to be mutated, doesn't it? Yeah, we got this from mutated Starstone Barrows. This again from mutated Requarter, Lazarus Instrumentality, and then we've just got a couple crafted pieces of gear here as well. I would recommend probably just going for the crafted set. I think it's just an easier way to go about it. You don't need 3 perks as well. The perks that we've got here: Ancient Ward, Fortifying Sacred Ground, Ancient Ward, Keen Beacon. The Void Gauntlet, similar to what we had with the Corrupted setup, is a refreshing move, Ancient Bane, but we do have a 3rd perk here, and it's Blessed, just to do a little bit extra healing. This could also be Keen, it could be Enchanted. Honestly, there's a few perks that you could put there, but Blessed, obviously, going to allow you to do a little bit extra healing with your Orb of Decay if you're running it, or the Void Caller passive that you get from the left side ultimate. And the life staff that we're using is going to be pretty much the same throughout, with a few exceptions. Blessed, refreshing move, and mending protection. And you guys can refer to the corrupted ward section if you want to talk, hear a bit more about those perks. Jewelry wise, it's just going to be a copy of what we have up above, but with nature protection and amber gems. And the same with the earring, evasive, healthy toast, and amber gem, and the ring. For the reason that we talked about in Corrupted Ward, same thing here as well. Moving over to my Lost Ward set, you guys are going to recognize a pattern here, so we're not going to like spend too much time going over it, but it's effectively just the Ancient Ward and Corrupted Ward has been replaced with Lost Ward now. The Amber Gems, again, would change if we were going into Lost Ward, but with Void, then I would change these all to Amethyst. But Keen Beacon is a perk that I've always been valuing, so we got Keen Beacon there on the gloves, Fortifying Sacred Ground, Keen Beacon on the chest, Fortifying Sacred Ground on the gloves. Nullifying Oblivion isn't actually a perk that I don't think you need with Lost Ward or Lost Mutations. There's not really any buffs to strip away, but I've somehow ended up with that anyway. And then we also have Lost Ward Voracious Blade here as well. Voracious Blade is a perk that sometimes I'm trying to get it into every set because it just gives you a little bit extra healing. If you drop below 50%, but you're swinging in with the Void Blade and you're standing in Sacred Ground, it's actually pretty substantial healing. Moving over to the Void Gauntlet, we have a Vicious, Refreshing Move, and Putrefying Scream. Now, Putrefying Scream is probably something that we should have had up here with the Ancient Ward set as well. Whenever it is a nature mutation, the enemies actually do quite a bit of healing. So if we look at the Empyrean Forge here, there is this Overgrown mutation, and the top line there, it says Compost, enemies leave a zone upon death, healing enemies that stand in it for 3% health per second. So they actually do a fairly decent amount of healing from that one. Sometimes you can also get Vampiric here as well, where they heal for the damage done. So you can counter that healing by going for a Putrefying Scream, which reduces their healing by 40% for 8 seconds, combined with a refreshing move, Void Gauntlet, so you can just keep lowering cooldowns. You can just scream on the enemy back to back, and keep that healing down by quite a substantial amount. So I find it to be a pretty good support tool to keep the Putrefying Scream going in on the enemies. The life staff is the same with we're running in 2 different sets, or the previous 2 sets, and then the same with the jewelry as well. Nature Protection Health. We've got the evasive Healthy Toast earring, and I'm using the Stone Hewn ring as we have with previous sets. PvP healer, we'll come to this one last because I think this is actually going to be a bit of a different set from other stuff we've been running, so we'll go to the end of the video for PvP healer. Moving over to my Angry Earth Ward set, it's going to be fairly similar stuff here as well. This is ice, but obviously the gems would change depending if we were going into a different mutation. Nullifying Oblivion is something that I really recommend you guys get for your Angry Earth Ward set, because Angry Earth Ward is pretty much only used in Garden of Genesis right now. Garden of Genesis does feature the soldier enemies, the guys with the big mace, and they apply a pretty hefty fortify to themselves, which you want to strip away with Nullifying Oblivion to make it easier for your team to do damage to them. So yeah, I recommend going for the Nullifying Oblivion in this set. We have a chest with intelligence on it, which is a bit unusual. We don't often get intelligence on our gear, but this just ended up being a pretty good chest piece that I had, and it worked well with the other stuff that we got, because we actually have medium gloves and medium legs here. So you'll see in most of the sets that I'm rocking, it's a medium chest, and everything else is light, but we mixed things up a little bit here. We went for medium legs instead, which means we can go for medium gloves or medium helmet or medium boots. But yeah, the gloves and the legs is what I went for. Fortifying Sacred Ground is there again. We've also got Keen Beacon on the boots, and then we've got some legs that we got from, I think these come from Barnacles and Black Powder. Again, if you can get Elemental Aversion plus the ward, that's a really good combo there. And the chest piece. Freedom can actually help a little bit against the soldiers, but this was kind of just what we had at the time. The Void Gauntlet, similar to what we have in other setups, has Refreshing Move, and then it's got the Bane perk. If this was a nature mutation, then obviously we'd probably want to get Putrefying Scream in there to reduce their healing, but there's no nature mutation with this set because we've set it up for ice. I do put a fire gem, and I didn't actually mention this, but sometimes you can change it to a different gem in your Void Gauntlet depending on the enemies that you're facing. So the Corrupted are particularly weak to arcane damage, so I put a sapphire gem into the Void Gauntlet to do more arcane damage. The Angry Earth are particularly weak to fire, so I put a Ruby Gem into this Void Gauntlet to convert some of the damage into fire, just so we can hit them extra hard. And we've got the Refreshing Move there for the same reason that we talked about with previous Void Gauntlets, just gets our cooldowns up faster. Lifestaff has been the same that we've seen in the other builds so far, and then the Amulet, because this is the ice sort of set that we've gone for. We've got Frozen Protection plus health. We've got the Stone-Hewn Ring, as previously with other sets. And the Earring here, we have actually managed to get a best in slot Earring, in my opinion, with Healthy Toast, Evasive, and Refreshing Toast. And of course the Ice Gem to correspond with the Ice Mutation. I'm moving over to my Human Ward set for the brand new dungeon, Empyrean Forge. It is obviously a nature mutation here, so we've got Overgrown, Savage, and Fiendish. So I have a set here that is a little bit unusual. It still needs some fine tweaking, and sadly we haven't got any legendary pieces for it yet. But we'll talk about the helmet in a little bit. I'll just move straight onto the chest here. This is a Human Ward Fortifying Sacred Ground chest. We have a Human Ward Keen Beacon pair of gloves, a Human Ward Voracious Blade pair of legs, and then just Human Ward Refreshing boots that we got here. So nothing particularly insane. Sadly, no Human Ward Elemental Aversion. You can't craft that. You just need to get it to drop. And then we have another set down here, which is all fire gems. Now, the reason that I've been doing this is when we start off in the dungeon, I put this set on, and until we get to the first boss, I just keep this set on here. And then when we get to the boss, we switch over. Now, quickly, we'll just talk about what we have here. It's a Vicious, Refreshing Move, and Putrefying Scream. Refreshing Move and Scream obviously going to be useful there. Vicious would be better if it was a Human Bane, but the Refreshing Move Scream works in the same that we talked about with the Genesis or Nature Mutations, where the enemies actually do an incredible amount of healing in Empyrean Forge, because they also have Lifestaff users in there as well that pop down Sacred Ground. So you really want to keep the Scream on the enemies to stop them from healing too much, and then you go in with the Blade, just to make sure that, you know, you can keep lowering those cooldowns and do some damage at the same time. And obviously, putting your heals down before you go in to make sure people don't die. There is a balance, I find, between like swinging with the blade and getting Scream, but then managing to switch back to the Lifestaff in time, so you can do some left clicks with the Lifestaff so you can lower your cooldowns. It is a bit of an art to finding the right balance of, you know, having the Void Gauntlet in your hand versus having the Lifestaff in your hand. But yeah, for the same reason that we've had with other mutations, we're going for a full set of Amber Gems here. With the Nature Protection and the Nature Damage Absorption Gems. Stone-Hewn Ring is still in there. This helmet ideally wants to be a helmet that's the same as these down here as well, but I had a problem where I don't have, like, the current helmet that I was using didn't line up. I was using this thing down here, but it had Constitution, and it was changing my stats around too much, so we do need to recraft this helmet and go for one with an Amber Gem as well. But for now, I've just been using one Fire Ward Gem. But I do switch to a full set of Fire Ward Gems for this Empyrean boss fight set. So if you go against the bosses in the Empyrean Forge, they just do fire damage. Like, it's basically all fire damage. Even if it's a Nature Mutation, it's still, like, basically all fire damage that you're taking. So I've gone for a set of Human Ward plus Flame Conditioning here, which is pretty unusual. I haven't done that with any of the dungeons so far, but I do find that it keeps me alive. There's a lot of damage. Like, it is really challenging in the final boss fight of Empyrean Forge. There's so much damage coming out that having that flame conditioning just to lower the fire damage you take, so you don't need to be healing yourself as much, I found it to be pretty useful. And of course, we've got the Keen Beacon and the Fortifying Sacred Ground in there, as always. The Void Gauntlet and the Lifestaff I actually switch up as well. So when we go into the final boss fight of Empyrean Forge, I have been switching over my final... So again, this is just for the final boss. I've been doing Oblivion, Orb, Rupture, and then we just go and get the Void Caller over here. Although, to be honest, this pretty much never procs, so maybe you could get Glimpse of the Void if you wanted to, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Oblivion, Essence Rupture, and Orb of Decay. Orb obviously gives us some pretty good healing options. We can detonate it for some extra heals, and then Essence Rupture also has been pretty clutch as well, just to give 20% lifesteal to my team. Again, I just find the healing to be super, super intensive in the final boss fight. Like, it's one of the most stressful fights to heal so far, I've found. So we actually switch over, we drop Orb because it just doesn't do enough healing, and I've been picking up Splash of Light instead. So for those of you looking for a reason to run Splash of Light, rejoice, because we've got this here. When it comes to the Lifestaff that I wanted to use for this build, I decided to just go for good old-fashioned Will of the Ancients, because none of the other weapon perks really felt like they were that useful, like Keen Beacon. Just, you know, maybe like increase the crit chance, but honestly just the Blast, Refreshing Move, and Refreshing, so we can just use our abilities as often as possible. The Purity of Light perk doesn't actually feel like it really works in the final boss fight, because there's no debuffs that you can remove. For those of you who don't know, there is a life staff you can get with Purity of Light, and it says when you remove a debuff, you heal for a little bit extra, but Splash of Light just doesn't seem to be removing any debuffs. It doesn't feel like there's any debuffs you can actually remove in the final boss fight. So yeah, we just gone for classic Will of the Ancients here. I've also gone for a Void Gauntlet with Refreshing Rupture and Blessed as well, with, again, just an intent to try and do as much healing as possible. We don't really bother with Void Blade or any damage sort of stuff for the final boss fight of Empyrean Forge, so just really pumping in the big heals. One thing that you guys might have noticed is I don't have a fire damage absorption amulet here, and that is because the final mutation in Empyrean Forge is still actually chunking you for quite a bit. So you've got Fiendish here and Blood Offering, and it says using abilities apply as a stack of Offering, causing 4.5% max health nature damage over time, stacking up to 3 times. And I find that when I just cast like 3 abilities back to back, so we do this, and then we put that, and then we do this, I've already got 3 stacks on me, and I'm getting chunked for like more than 10% of my health per second, and then we've also got the fire dots as well. It gets really rough really fast, so I've actually decided to keep the nature amulet in here just to reduce or curb some of that nature damage, but we still have a heavy emphasis on fire damage because most of the boss damage is fire, but the mutation obviously causing the nature damage over time every time we cast an ability. And if this was going to be a frost mutation, then I would switch this to a frost amulet, if that makes sense. One thing that I want to touch on as well, I'm aware that we haven't done it here, is our heart rune. I've just been using the stone form rune throughout all of the content now because I just find myself, you know, it's a new season, things are a little bit different. I feel like I'm taking more damage, so I've just been using this stalwart heart rune of stone form. It comes up fairly often, gives you a little bit of damage protection with the fortify, although that's not much, but the big reason here is the mending form. If you can heal for 75% heart rune damage per second, and also be standing in the sacred ground, that increases more incoming healing by 50%, so it's 50% stronger than it would normally be. Just, I don't know, I find Stalwart Heart Rune to be really nice. It can get you out of stuns as well. You can pop it while you're doing other things. It doesn't have an animation, so Stoneform has just been like a lifesaver for me, but if you do want to go out more aggressive, you could maybe look to take Detonate, or maybe if you want to reduce healing, you could go the Bile Bomb. But yeah, Stoneform has been what I've been going for. Consumables, we just have Health Potion, Mana Potion, Regen Potion across the board. And then the third slot I'm using here is a specific Ward Potion for the relevant dungeon that I'm going into. So Infused Corrupted Ward Potion for Corrupted Dungeons. We've got Infused Ancient Ward Potion for Ancient Dungeons. And I pop this when we're going into a really big pull, or if the tank loses aggro on a bunch of enemies. Popping these can often save your bacon quite a few times. So yeah, getting some ward potions if you really want to go try hard is something I recommend. Otherwise, you can just go for some gemstone dust to reduce elemental damage, because a good chunk of damage that you take in mutations is elemental anyway, and gemstone dust is just a nice catch-all for that. All right, looks like this video has been going long enough here, guys, so I am gonna wrap this one up here. I know it was pretty quick and we didn't cover the PvP set or my human ward mage set, but I just wanted to focus on the healing sets that I'm using here. Again, remember that if you do want to go competitive, you can change all of your gems out here, but you don't necessarily have to. If you're just looking to get the dungeon done, you could just go for opal gems instead as a nice coverall, catch-all, and maybe just change like 1 or 2 gems per week to save yourself a bit of gold. But if you want to go full tryhard, I recommend getting amulets with protection and the relevant gem to correspond with it as well. Also do the same with your earring. Look to get the Healthy Toast Evasive. Must-have perks, in my opinion, these days are just Fortifying Sacred Ground and Keen Beacon to increase the damage. And if you want to go aggressive with the Void Blade, go for Voracious Blade. Get the Refreshing move and ideally the Bane perk as well, and just, you know, drop the heals down and get in there and swing. Okay, that is going to do it for this video, friends. Again, we do have some more deep dives to healing, tanking, mages, DPS, all those different build setups going to be coming out in the next few weeks. If you want to see those, once again, make sure you go ahead and click the subscribe button, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.